In terms of just kind of, again, some preliminary assessments, I kind of already talked about some of the water and the rust color that came out when I drained the oil. That's alarming. You can also kind of see that there's a lot of caked grease on the frame here. I think that there must be the oil seal here behind the main, or the chain gear, that is leaking. So fortunately, when I pull everything out of the apart, I'm going to do my best to kind of give you a parts list of what I'm ordering in terms of bearings and oil seals and stuff like that, because I really do want to give the thing kind of the full onion treatment. So I'm going to pull everything apart. I'm going to pull this out, get it on my workbench. I'm going to split the crankcase. We're going to go through it, and I want this thing to be brand, clean as a whistle, brand spanking new when I put it back together. I'm going to paint it. So while the engine's out of the bike, I'll kind of start working some of this other stuff. I got to get some rust off, and I think I am going to get everything off, and probably I'll just paint the frame. I'll disassemble the entire thing. That's probably the direction we're headed. Okay, so in terms of kind of overall diagnosis, when I first got the engine, like, what was the engine condition like? So first, I can tell you there was a ton of carbon deposits in the head. I mean, this I have since cleaned out, but it was really thick. It looked like kind of orange peel wall texture, if you know what I'm talking about there. But it was really, really thick carbon deposits sitting in there. This has a little bit of pitting in it, which you want these. You almost want your cylinders to be polished to the degree where if a particle hits it that's sticky, it's going to be more inclined to just kind of graze off and go out your exhaust rather than stick to the walls. So the more you can polish these, the better. But there is a little bit of pitting there. I'm going to have to kind of see what I'm going to do there. I might actually just weld it and then grind it back down. I'm not sure. There's one that you probably can't see the detail on the camera. It's kind of deep. But in any case, there was just a slight amount of rust on the very bottom of the spark plug. You can actually, here's the spark plug. You can kind of see how the bottom of the spark plug is rusty. That's a bad sign. Especially, given the fact that I saw, rust, a rust color and a little bit of, you can tell there's water in the oil because of how viscous it was. But when I looked at the cylinder walls, nothing in here was rusty. So as far as the cylinder and the cylinder walls are concerned, I think everything is relatively okay. I don't see any major gouges or things that I'm going to have to be concerned about. There's a little bit of scratching. I don't know. I actually might consider just getting this thing honed and go to the next piston size up. So one of the really convenient things about these motorcycles is right in the service manual, and I'll flash a picture of the screen here, is they actually have an additional 4 or 5 piston and piston ring sizes that you can order for this thing. So that means that as this cylinder, this OEM part, starts to wear, just because it wears to the point where you lose compression, because the piston becomes too small after so many miles of wear, you can actually go and hone this thing out. Basically clear off the walls, get all the scratches off the walls and everything, and just move to the next piston size up. So the standard size is just barely shy of 66 millimeters, and then that's the diameter where you measure. So the piston is actually tapered, and maybe we'll go over that when I do the assembly piece of it. But in terms of longevity of these parts, right out of the gate, the manufacturer, Yamaha, has made this so that, hey, if you want to bore this thing up to a larger piston size to shore up your compression a little bit after some wear, you can do that. So, and actually, the standard size pistons are harder to find, I found, in this whole process, than the next size and the next size after that up. Those actually become they become much easier to find, I found. But I did find a standard size piston, so, as I alluded to in my kind of the first clip there. All right, so that I think that's why we didn't have compression. I think that was kind of the, there's always a last ride. You kind of think about it. There's always a last ride when somebody was riding it and it quit, or somebody tried to start it and it wouldn't start, right? and then it just kind of sits. And this is, I don't know, the history, to know the history of how exactly this bike just got ignored like this all these years, I'm actually interested to know. I am disappointed that it sat out in the sun. I wish it didn't sit in the sun, but it's what made it super cheap for me to acquire. So, in fact, I got it for free. I traded some help, as I mentioned in the earlier clip. So I actually got this thing for free. So I feel like I won big time. Okay, so one other component to look at, and one reason why you might think that a rider gave up trying to get this thing to work, is if the reeds actually get worn out and start failing. Now, at 5,000 miles, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think that you need reeds at 5,000 miles. I guess it depends on how hard you've ridden this thing. Is that 5,000 miles of hard trail riding? I guess it could be, but so one of the things you want to look for when you're inspecting your reeds is this is basic. It's a one-way valve, right? That's basically what a reed does. And so this is the intake side. So basically this is the engine side of your carburetor, and it sucks the fuel air mixture into the engine. This little gate opens up and allows it in there, and then when the motor on its second stroke, or on its first stroke, is it's compressing, and then power stroke, right? On its power stroke, this little valve gets pushed shut, so that way you don't have back pressure and compression loss coming out through your carburetor. So that's all these little reeds are designed to do. So, but that does mean that you need these to they need to have nice clean edges, and they need to be seated shut in the resting position, which these actually appear to be in good condition. So this is another reason why I believe that carbon buildup was the problem, and why why whoever the last rider was gave up on this motorcycle. I don't think that it had to do with the reeds. So that's just an important thing to look at. Is the intake boots. I am noticing just a little bit of cracking on it. So this is the side of the reeds. This is the side of the carburetor. So there is a little bit of cracking on here, so where I could have some potential vacuum loss. It's something that's really important to look at. I don't see that this is so bad, especially with how thick it is. So I don't think that's a problem. I don't think I had vacuum loss through the manifold here. All right, so let's move over to the carburetor real quick. So I'll show you the condition of the carburetor. So actually, before I do that, so I think overall, the reason that this rider, whoever the prior owner was that that encountered the original issue and decided never to ride it again, I think it was because of carbon buildup on top of the piston inside the chamber. And I think that's why it lost compression. I feel like there was some grit around the piston rings that were preventing the piston rings from, being springy and being able to push against the cylinder wall. I think that's what will ultimately happen, why it lost compression. Now, after years of sitting, here's some photos of the carburetor that basically ended up with honey sitting in the bottom of them. I mean, this is just a thick goo in the bottom of this float bowl. And then the other piece is, so what you're looking at here is the original carburetor. This is a Mikuni carburetor, and it actually does have the stamp, the 2A7 stamp, if you can see it right there, just barely above this black hose. So this is the original OEM carburetor that was on this bike. And so I do feel, somewhat obligated to try to resurrect it and try to restore this thing. I mean, everything inside this was stuck. Everything. The jet was hard to get out. I managed to do it without stripping it, but, getting the choke assembly was just completely stuck. So now I've actually got it unstuck. It moves again. The gasket I'm going to have to replace, but I have some gasket paper I can just trace, use this really good template that I still have, and we'll trace a new gasket for it. As far as the jets are concerned, like these brass parts, there is some pitting. Like, I've cleaned these things pretty good. I know that they're clean inside. In fact, I have a 3D printer, and this is a needle, if you can see it, that I use to clean out my 3D printer nozzles. They actually have, you know, a kind of official, you know, sets. Kind of, it's almost like a keychain of different size needles that you can use to clean out your jets. But I don't have one of those. I just probably just need to spend the $9 to get it. But in any case, you know, having something super skinny like that if you're planning on cleaning your jets, because I actually couldn't do it with just carb cleaner. I put it in a sonic bath, you know, an ultrasonic bath. That only went so far. I actually had to stick something through there to push all the particulates out and get all the holes cleaned out. So my main jet, pilot jet, the mixture screw, everything is just kind of cleaned up. So there's actually not a lot of parts to these carburetors. They actually are really simple. And I actually think with the way that things have cleaned up here, I don't have to go and order a new carb kit. Because the carb kit, basically the only benefit that I feel like I would get is the gasket. The carb kits don't actually come with a float. Floats by themselves are like $50. So I've got a float. I validated that it still has buoyancy. It's still, you know, we're still good there. So all the rest of these components, it was just a matter of getting them unstuck and getting the honey off of them. So I feel I've got, let's say I've got, you know, a 95% confidence at this point that I'll be able to reassemble this OEM carburetor and at least keep that original. So there's that. So on to the engine. I'm going to take the engine off. So just a couple of mounts here on the front and on the back, or excuse me, right here and right here. And then from there we're going to put it on the bench and we'll start tearing it apart. And the name of the game is going to be, we'll press out bearings and we'll press in some new bearings. I actually have a 20-ton press in my shop, in my garage here, but you know, there's other ways to do that without having a 20-ton press. Mine, you know, this is the easy way to do it, I think. But you can do it with heat. You can do it, you know, with a vise. I've seen people do it. Okay, so let's get to it.